result of, in the fall, there were several, I went back to look at my notes to see when the conversation started. And it seemed like perhaps it was the end of September, but then it's carried through, October, that there were some controversial class assignments. And we were informed by the superintendent that, as the members of our community were communicating some concerns about the portions of these assignments that seemed discriminatory, that they were the result of this policy. So if our policies are responsible for these assignments, then I just felt that perhaps we needed to be looking at them again.
And was there a certain bullet point that you were looking at?
Yeah, is there a specific thing you wanted to change or suggest changing, or?
That's the thing that I don't know if we can if we as a board can come together to, have a discussion about how we could even change this. I don't have a lot of specific things. There's things that I've suggested, but not enough to do. Because when I think about equity, typically or historically, equity means impartial distribution of justice. It has to do with justice and being impartial. Today, equity is current meaning in most of the things that I'm reading is equal outcomes. But equal outcomes doesn't really reflect impartial justice. So equity in education is not anything new. It's something that's traditionally meant having an extra allocation of resources for learning or physically disabled or special needs students to promote equitable outcomes. That would be a hearing aid for, a deaf student or, Braille books or, for any kind of learning disability or physical disabilities. But now it seems like equity is being used to expand, to put race and gender as a basis for these clinical needs.
I don't think it's a basis. I just think it's broadening the strokes of it's not just a hearing aid, it's not just a wheelchair, it's not just a Braille book,
It's understanding the student.
Yeah.
And the needs that the student has on an individual student basis.
Right, based on their personal characteristics, such as creed, color, religion, ancestry.
Right. So equity, though, is oftentimes we're seeing, especially in some of the assignments, that it's discriminatory. Like it doesn't. So we have laws against discrimination.
Sure.
And yet some of these things that are coming up in the name of equity are discriminatory.
Okay.
So I'll just one particular assignment where racism, I'm just going to pick up that one, was defined as the marginalization or oppression of people of color based on a socially constructed racial hierarchy that favors or privileges white people.
Yeah. Okay.
So when it's given like that, that definition comes from the Anti-Defamation League. Why wasn't something from Webster Dictionary used where they might define it as a system of structuring opportunity and assigning value based on physical properties such as skin color and hair texture? Because that definition is open to any person can be racist.
Well, I would add that why isn't that Webster definition included in the other definition?
I know. But to have only that way of defining racism,
It's only that way on that one ditto, and I'm not interested in auditing people's
I'm
assignments.
not saying audit time.
That's just one example that you found where it's defined that way. And you could define it that way, or you could define it a softer way, like Webster did. But either way,
So.
I don't have any changes to this policy.
Nor do I, but not to interrupt you, Mr. Ryder, but the idea of a policy, and based on our other conversations earlier, where I mentioned that it's better to have more definitions for things we're already doing than not, it would seem that the definitions that you're referring to, the one that is more inclusive to the potential, racism takes various forms, whether blatant or implicit. And it could be something egregious, it could be something very soft. And that, there's countless examples to refer to, and again, not to belabor the point, but the timeliness after reflecting on Martin Luther King's contributions yesterday, the idea that we would be somehow in a position or wanting to do anything that loosens the protections is beyond me. And if you're suggesting that we remove wording from a policy that's designed to highlight a real factor that impacts the population in general, let alone our schools, it's just beyond my understanding. I can't understand why we would be wanting to do that. I understand your concerns, and correct me if I'm wrong, please. I don't want to assume anything. But if your concerns are that a student that is not under one of the legally protected classes of individuals might be offended, or I'm not targeted, let me know what the right word is. That would be an individual's response to a situation that they've experienced. Again, I don't mean to oversimplify things. And we cannot do for one if we can't do for all. We cannot protect everyone from being offended. I think we'd agree with that. So, if we have an assignment based on our school policies, our school missions, the Board of Ed mission statement and objectives, then that, and I want to reiterate that as a larger board, we are a board that is a governing body of the district, and we have a certain place in the process of the students receiving their education. If we are to dictate what assignments are acceptable and what are not, when the administrators and the teachers at the front line are given the tasks of expanding the minds and opening the conversations to things that the students may or may not have previous experience with, why would we do anything to get in the way of that? Well, how would we, that's presumptuous beyond my comprehension, that we would be so bold as to presume that we could do that. That we would want to say to our teachers, listen, you used a word in there that I disagree with. Perhaps you should
Can
take
you
it
please
out.
stop recording? Can you please stop recording?
I'm not
Public comments
recording.
are not, public comments are not.
I'm not talking to you or talking to the other public over there. I'm asking you to please stop recording.
I'm not recording.
I'm not stupid. I'm just asking you to
So-
please
You
stop.
have to stop talking, please.
So does she. She has to stop recording. Thank you. I'm sorry to interrupt you.
To the point that I was making, that we as a governing body would step in front of the teacher as they're teaching that lesson to a student that may not have an awareness of it. It's not our place. It's not what we're here for. That's not what we're here to do.
we're not looking at stuff in here at all. But what we are looking to say is, when we have, when something like this is defined, racism being something that, according to this, what the children are being taught, racism is something that only is something inherent in white people. That would not be true. Racism is a terrible thing. It's terrible for anybody.
So,
But what would that do when you've got this paper going and the students are learning this and they realize, oh, it's a white person thing.
Right, well, that's just, again, one example of one ditto,
True.
so.
So this could be a disadvantage because it's gonna cause greater division among students, the possibility of it. Would the students, would people of color begin to view themselves as being oppressed? Would they begin to view themselves as being weak?
Based on that ditto, no, they probably feel like that from living and being
Yeah.
in society. I'm okay with that one word in that one example.
Even though it's discriminatory.
It's not, that's just how you're interpreting it, I don't see it that way. So anyway, back to the policy, 0523, if you have suggested changes that you wanna make, we can leave that tabled till next month. I don't have any changes on this, as it's written, but if you have anything specific, please let us know.
Okay, items from the table?